All right, the title is War. There is an invisible war going on right now, and it's always been going on since Eve decided to take some free samples in the garden. Until now, there's a conflict, and everybody's enlisted. Every single person that breathes is signing up to fight in this war. That you can't get out of it. You're drafted, period. Whether you want to be fighting or not, you are fighting on one side or the other. Now, I call this the war of God versus evil, not good versus evil. It's God versus evil. God is the one who's against evil. We sometimes do some things that are good, and we're not necessarily against evil, but God's always against evil. The wickedness or the evil of wickedness is just apparent to him where it's not to us. He sees it in vivid color, and it confuses us sometimes. We're fooled by it, but he's not. Revelation 12, verse 7. Revelation 12:7. I'm going to probably just move faster than you can turn, but you'll hear the reference anyway. Revelation 12, verse 7, it says, "And there was war in heaven." Now, that's not what's going on right now. It is still going on in heaven, but that one doesn't really affect us a whole lot. There's war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. So when good and evil fight, one of them wins. Good. God always wins. You can't deny that one. That's just a fact. We know it's going to happen. But sometimes we find ourselves slipping over and fighting for the enemy, for evil, when we know evil's defeated. In Romans chapter 7, verse 23, it starts getting personal. Romans 7:23, Paul says, talking church age here, "But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members." Now that's a problem right there. The warfare is right here within you. And where does it fight? It fights your mind, because you know good and evil. You know which one's right and which one's wrong. And the war is so strong that even knowing which one is right and wrong, the wrong can still win. That's a strong warfare, and it's right within our body. He says it's against his mind. So with the mind, he knows this is right and this is wrong. Yet sometimes he finds himself going to the wrong, even though he knows it's wrong. Now that's a powerful battle. In 1 Timothy 1, verse 18, 1 Timothy 1:18, Paul's given Timothy his marching orders. He says, "This charge I commit unto thee, son Timothy, according to the prophecies which went before on thee, that thou by them mightest war a good warfare." You're going to be fighting, and you need to be fighting good. You don't need to be a slacker when you go into battle. That's not the time to pull the "I'm tired" card, take a me day. It doesn't work that way. When war happens, it happens many times by surprise. They didn't realize the enemy was sitting there. All of a sudden they opened up on them. Now they got a battle. They start fighting. Okay, be able to war a good warfare at the drop of a hat. In 1 Peter 2:11, he says, "Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lust, which war against the soul." Now, we talked about the mind before. Peter's talking here about the soul, the part you're trying to act like Christ. That's the real you, the control center, that soul. And he says fleshly lusts, the things this flesh wants, are what are going to fight against your soul. Okay, first point we'll make is the mind matters. In this warfare, the mind matters. I guess it does in every war. If you don't have your mind right, you're not going to shoot right. In Genesis 6, verse 5. Genesis 6, verse 5. There's times in life where you can feel the warfare strong. And there's times that it slacks off and you don't realize it. Then out of nowhere it pops up and you're engaged, whether you wanted to be or not. For the past month or so, I've felt it hammering hard. It's coming down. And as we get closer and closer to the Lord's return, it's going to get stronger and stronger. Now, it's important for us to know how to fight. Genesis 6, verse 5. And God saw that the wickedness, what is wickedness? Good question, we'll keep going. Of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. He said, whatever wickedness is, it was great. And he noticed in man, the imagination of his thoughts, where his mind was going, was evil. And it was a continual process. Evil didn't stop with the first entrance of evil. You know, you can't control what thoughts pop in your head. I mean, there's things you can do in life that limit when they pop in. However, you'll just be sitting there and out of the blue a thought will come to you that's just wicked. Prince of the power of the air. He'll throw one in there. Okay, you don't have to dwell on it. You don't have to entertain it. Once you start entertaining it, that's an imagination of the thought. The thought came in and you started imagining on it. That's wickedness. In Jeremiah 4, verse 14. Jeremiah 4:14. He says, O Jerusalem, wash thine heart from wickedness. Okay. They'd been dwelling on some things they shouldn't have been. Their mind was not where it should be. He says, wash your heart. Your heart, you got heart problems. We all do. Wash that heart up. Get it clean. That thou mayest be saved. How long shall thy vain thoughts lodge within thee? Vain thoughts. That's the warfare. That's the real battlefront. This mind. You know, a lot of the things that people get involved in could be solved real simply if they would change what they let their mind dwell on. When a thought comes in, if you'll cast it down, if it's a vain imagination that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, then you don't have to worry about the battle that's going to come up. You've just taken the ammunition from the enemy. However, if you start imagining, you're resupplying the enemy. In Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 12, Ezekiel 8, verse 12. This is more prevalent, I think, today than in Ezekiel's day, but I think it's a prophecy in Ezekiel's day about our day. This here is talking about every device that you can see a picture on. Then he said unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark? Every man in the chambers of his imagery. For they say, the Lord seeth us not. The Lord hath forsaken the earth. So they think they can get away with it. Well, it's the TV. Started with the TV. We've gone well beyond the TV now. It's the not so intelligent watches. It's the demonic phones. It's you name it. There's a device you can look at somewhere, and you got to be real careful because that's imagery. What's the first thing he told the children of Israel to do when you go in? Get rid of all the pictures. Get rid of all the images. I don't want you seeing them. They're wicked. So we got to be very careful. It was bad back then, but it's worse now. And as soon as the Antichrist comes up, he's going to put up an image of the beast. In Ephesians chapter 2. Ephesians 2, verse 1. He says, And you hath he quickened, who were dead in trespasses and sin. So he's talking to Christians. And he says, you've been brought to life. Quickened, that's what that means. You were dead in sins. That's the rest of the world. You were on the other team. Now you've been put back into the right army, a good one that's alive. Verse 2. Wherein in time past you walked according to the course of this world. So now he's going to explain that. According to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. So let's identify the children of disobedience. Because You can slip over and put on the wrong uniform and fight for the wrong army anytime you decide to. So he's going to tell us how you can identify him. Verse 3. Among whom also we all had our conversation in time past in the lust of the flesh. So just give it into whatever the flesh wants. I want it, I'm going to go get it. Fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind. You think it, you can have it. No, you can't. And were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. Children of whose wrath? God's. God's wrath. God's wrath is levied against somebody who thinks they can fulfill the desire of their flesh. You can't. It's not allowed. If there's a desire of the flesh to be fulfilled, he does it. Otherwise, you got it from the wrong team, and he ain't down with that. So that's the mind. The mind's a major battlefield. The next one is actions attract his attention. In 1 Samuel chapter 2, a lot of people do this. They want to live a good, godly Christian life. They want to study their Bible, and they want to be at church, and they want to talk to people, and they want to be... We all want the right things at certain times. But following through that desire is a whole nother story. He says here, or this is, who is this? What's that woman's name? Hannah. 1 Samuel 2, verse 3. Talk no more exceedingly proud. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. She is so mean. For the Lord is a God of knowledge. You ain't getting away with nothing. He knows. And by him, actions are weighed, not intentions. It doesn't matter what you intended to do. It matters what you did. The actions require a reaction. Genesis 13:13. Ooh, that's got to be a good one. Genesis 13:13. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Okay, so wickedness is exceeding sin. It's intentional, and it's done to an extreme. It's a continual sinning. He says these people were wicked and sinners before the Lord. God knew it. They knew he knew it, and it was open, and they didn't care. That describes America, Christian and unchristian. Both of them, by and large, are sinning and don't care. You want proof of it? Look at their devices. Whatever their account is, log on and look at it. They're posting it for the world to see. I'm wicked. I'll identify with the devil on this day, and then I'll post some scripture on this day. You can't fight both of them. In Genesis 18, verse 20. Genesis 18:20. And the Lord said, now this is going to be good. This is God talking. You know it's going to be good. And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous. So, there are some sins God considers grievous. Now, we know what those are. The sexual sins are very grievous to God. He doesn't play with that. Why do you think AIDS came about? God doesn't play. Venereal diseases that have ran the gamut before that. God's very serious about it. Now, I'm not going to tiptoe around this subject because I see so many young people shacking up. Yeah. That's not what God intended. Amen. And because of it, he will curse. Count on it. In Genesis... no, we already did Genesis. Let's go to Isaiah. Isaiah 3. Isaiah 3, verse 9. Isaiah 3, 9. He says, the show of their countenance doth witness against them, but they don't think it does. They're happy to live in sin and tell everybody about it. God says, no, you're witnessing against yourself. Your face is doing it. You can see it written all over their face. Yes. They're bold and brazen in wickedness. He says, and they declare their sin as Sodom. What was going on in Sodom? Immorality. They hide it not. Bad news. Woe unto their souls. That's the part you control. You control the soul. He says, woe unto their souls, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. They went out and said, with the show of their countenance, I want to be punished. Sadistic. Satanic. That's what it is. He says in Jeremiah 23:14. Jeremiah 23:14. He says, I have seen also in the prophets of Jerusalem an horrible thing. Now, he could have chose any word he wanted to use. He said, this is a horrible thing. They commit adultery. Adultery is a horrible thing. It doesn't stop there. And walk in lies. Well, you can't divorce adultery from a lie. You're lying to one person, and probably it's a lie to the other person. They are just a bunch of liars. They strengthen also the hands of evildoers. Okay, they're going to pal up with other liars just like themselves. You can identify the evildoers, and you better stay away from them or you'll become them. Very simple. That none doth return from his wickedness. They are all of them unto me as Sodom, and the inhabitants thereof as Gomorrah. Those were God's people. He said they're doing the same thing that was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. I've declared war against it. That's what he's saying. Look at 2 Peter 2. 2 Peter 2, verse 6. This is how God wars against this. 2 Peter 2, 6. And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemning them with an overthrow, making them an example, unto those that afterwards should live ungodly. Now, he didn't say, I'm making that an example for anybody who does the same thing they did. What's the example for? Anything ungodly. If God wouldn't do it, stay away from it. You could be ashes. That's what he's saying. Anybody who wants to be ungodly can experience the same thing God did to Sodom and Gomorrah. And delivering just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. If you're around somebody and they have filthy conversation, they're wicked, and you better get out of there, or Sodom and Gomorrah is soon to happen, and you may not get pulled out by the angels. You may go down in the flames with the rest of them. Verse 8. For that righteous man dwelling among them, seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. It didn't say that he entered into their conversation. It said he saw it and he heard it. There's no excuse saying, well, I don't talk that way, they do. No, sir, do you see it and do you hear it? Then get away from it. It's that simple. Look at verse 10. But chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness, and despise government. Presumptuous are they, self-willed. They're not afraid to speak evil of dignities. They have no respect. The only one they respect is themselves, and they really don't have any self-respect either. That keeps changing. Jude chapter 1. You can find another one, read that chapter 2. Jude verse 7. Yeah, right. Really? Yeah, really. Jude 1:7. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, here's what they did. We saw adultery earlier. Let's see the next thing that's given to us here. Giving themselves over to fornication. Okay, so whether they were married or unmarried, they were doing illicit sex outside of what God says he approves of. And God says that's why Sodom and Gomorrah went down in ashes. If you can't live according to the rules God set up, then God offers punishment for it. Period. He says, and going after strange flesh. It's strange if God didn't join it to you. What God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. What God ain't joined together, don't put it together. And are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. That's tough. Good thing I'm not Jude. They'd be saying I'm too hardcore. But Jude was tough. Matter of fact, the whole Bible is. If you just open your eyes, maybe read it out loud when you read it, it's a lot harsher than any preacher you ever heard. Now, if you're not involved in this wickedness, great. But don't think you're going to escape the battle. There's still a war out there. And that war is going to do what it does to everybody who fights a war. You're going to get wore out. I mean, I don't know how you spell that, but that's the way it sounds, wore out. You will be wore out. It'll wear on you. Here's what happened. 2 Samuel chapter 3. 2 Samuel 3, verse 39. This is David. They're about to anoint him king, or they've just anointed him king. And Joab has been doing wickedness. He's killing innocent people when he doesn't need to. He's got his own reasons for it, and they're not legitimate. 2 Samuel 3:39. And I am this day weak, though anointed king. I'm king, I'm doing right. God put me in the position I was meant for my whole life. I'm finally here, but I'm just wore out. And these men, the sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. The Lord shall reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. Now, that you can take solace in. When you're in the battle, when you're getting wore out from it, you don't have to fight it. God's going to take care of it. Know the end of the battle is God's. You just supply whatever portion you're supposed to do. The fulfilling of the battle will be complete. God will win, and he'll do it. You don't have to. You don't have to justify yourself. What's going to happen? You get in a battle, and the devil's going to do what he always does. He's going to badmouth the right person. He's going to call evil good and good evil. That's what he's going to do. But guess what? It's not your battle. You're just a foot soldier. It's God's battle. God is going to right the wrongs in his time. 1 Kings 2. 1 Kings 2, verse 5. Joab should have been put to death. At least twice. At least twice. 3 times. 4 times. He had many things he did that was obvious it required the death penalty. And David didn't give it to him. Out of mercy or a guilty conscience. Because Joab knew all about Bathsheba. Who knows? But anyway, he should have been put to death. And he's going to get his. Here it comes. 1 Kings 2:5. David's telling Solomon this. Moreover, thou knowest also what Joab the son of Zeruiah did to me, and what he did to the 2 captains of the host of Israel, unto Abner the son of Ner, and unto Amasa the son of Jether, whom he slew, and shed the blood of war in peace, and put the blood of war upon his girdle that was about his loins, and his shoes that were on his feet. He killed one man right as he was going into the gate into the city of refuge. Talk about wicked on top of wicked. That's pure wickedness. Look at 1 Kings 2:33. He says, their blood therefore shall return upon the head of Joab and upon the head of his seed forever. But upon David and upon his seed and upon his house and upon his throne shall there be peace forever from the Lord. In verse 34, so Benaiah the son of Jehoiada went up and fell upon him and slew him, and he was buried in his own house in the wilderness. He got killed. He ran to the altars. Okay, now I'm going to play holier than thou. I'm going to church. I'm going to get it all right now. No, he wasn't. He was trying to get away. He was trying to live. When you really repent of wickedness, you don't care what the outcome. You just want to get it right. No, he was trying to determine the outcome. That's not right. Look at Psalm 7. Psalm 7, verse 16. The Bible says, his mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealings shall come down upon his own pate. Now, do you see how that's the very same thing said twice? Mischief is violent dealings. Now, what do I mean by that? What is mischief? Think about mischief. Mischief is sneaky, mischievous. Okay, violent means a violation. Doesn't necessarily mean it's hitting somebody or killing somebody or physical violence, but it's a violation. For instance, when you speed, you get a speeding violation ticket. That means you broke the law. God's got a bunch of laws in here. Man's running around breaking them. That's violence. Now, you can identify the people that this applies to. Do they break rules? Are they not a law abider? If they can't obey their parents' rules, they can't obey the school's rules, they can't obey the government's rules. This is God's conclusion on it. They're going to get it. It's going to fall right on their own head. I'm going to repay them. So that's a wicked person. They're playing on the wrong army. Psalms 28, verse 4. Psalms 28, verse 4. Here's how devious they get. He says, give them according to their deeds and according to the wickedness of their, see that word? Endeavors. Now, that's what this wicked crowd does. They come up with ingenious ways to get around the system. They're going to break the rules. That's not the question. The question is, how are they going to do it so you don't spot it till it's too late? That's what they're doing. He says, give them after their work of their hands, render to them their dessert. Okay, meal is over. You had the big steak. You got around the rules. Here's your dessert. It's called evil. And you'll have to eat it. 2 Timothy 4. 2 Timothy 4, verse 14. 2 Timothy 4, verse 14. Paul says, Alexander the coppersmith did me much evil. Now, rather than him saying, I'm going to go after that boy and I'm going to get him, here's what he did. We don't know what he did to him. How come he didn't tell us? Because it's nobody's business. He didn't give us a whole list of here's what he did, when he did it, and how, I was bad-mouthed and I did this wrong and he did that wrong. Okay, he says right here, the Lord reward him according to his works. God will repay him. You can count on it. There's times he does. You got a question?
Oh, no, I just noticed in the next verse 15, of whom be thou aware also, for he hath greatly withstood our words.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there is one thing that is shown, and that is...
Yeah, it's in general, but nothing specific.
Right.
Right. No, he didn't. Now, he does in Hymenaeus and the other guy, he gives you a little more information. But basically, he's just saying, I'm leaving it up to God. Y'all stay away from him. And that's all you need to know. Well, you don't need to know the whole story. But here, it's a good, encouraging verse for us because it tells us something. God repays right to the righteous and evil to the wicked. That's what he's going to do. The Lord will reward him. Now, the deception of the wicked. The wicked are deceived. If you want to be wicked, you've just signed up to be fooled, and you're the fool. In Proverbs 12, verse 12, Proverbs 12, verse 12. He said, the wicked desireth the net of evil men. Now that does not make any sense. You know what a net is. A net is something that's going to trap you. You know that thing everybody logs on every day, the internet? Okay, it's designed to trap you. Okay. He said a wicked man desires the net of evil men. See some evil men out there setting out traps, and he says, oh, man, I sure would like to get caught in that. Make any sense? But the root of the righteous yieldeth fruit. Now, the wicked don't set out saying, I want to be trapped. They say, I want the goodie that's supposed to attract somebody to the net. You always dangle some sort of a bait. And so the wicked says, well, hey, I'm fooled. I'm a fool. Let me get that bait over there. Don't be desiring his dainty meats. They're no good. In Proverbs 1, verse 17. Proverbs 1:17. He says, surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird. These people are stupider than a bird. And they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain. Just got to have more. More. I don't need any more. I just got to have it. Which taketh away the life of the owners thereof. That'll kill you. A lot of people out killing themselves. Smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, doing drugs. They know it's killing them. They don't care. Because there's a beautiful trap over there. That's what they're doing. They're jumping right in the net. In Proverbs 29:5. Proverbs 29:5. This net's laid down all the time. A man that flattereth his neighbor spreadeth a net for his feet. You start hearing somebody flattering you, watch out. Start looking for the string. There's a net somewhere trying to trap you. In verse 6, in the transgression of an evil man there is a snare, but the righteous doth sing and rejoice. So he says there, the transgression of an evil man. Transgression is not sin. It can be sin, but it's not necessarily sin. Transgression, we've been through sin, transgression, and iniquity before. Transgression means simply to trespass, to break a rule whether you knew it or didn't know it. So in the transgression of an evil man, there's a snare. Even the small things that an evil person does that are not necessarily that bad, according to our thinking, there's a snare. It's a trap. He can't do anything. He says even the plowing of the wicked is what's the sin, maybe. You have to look that up sometime. God doesn't even like the wicked when they start plowing. They can't even do anything right. So he says an evil person, if you see them do a minor thing that's wrong, you need to identify them. Are they evil? If they're evil, the second they take one wrong step, look out, there's a trap behind that. It's a snare. In Psalms 9, verse 15. Psalm 9, verse 15. He says, the heathen are sunk down in the pit that they made. In the net which they hid is their own foot taken. Now, if only you could make people realize this when you tell them, hey, to do this thing is against God and it creates a trap for you. It's going to destroy you and you're going to have to fight and deal with this situation the rest of your life. Stay away from it. And they won't do it. That's what they're doing right here. They're digging a pit and jumping in. But jumping in with knowledge. They're building a net and you tell them, hey, look, don't build nets. You get trapped in those things. And they say, I can handle it. It won't be long. Their foot will be taken. Psalms 10, verse 9. Psalm 10, verse 9. This is, if you can get this right, you save yourself a lot of heartache. Psalm 10, verse 9. He lieth in wait, what's that word? Secretly. As a lion in his den, he lieth in wait to catch the poor. He doth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net. Secrecy. I'm going to have this little group over here, and I'm going to tell them this. I'm going to have this little group over here, and I'm going to tell them this story. And I've got to keep in my mind straight which one I'm talking to. It's a trap. The second you set out to keep secrets, you've identified yourself as the wicked. Keep things open and honest before the sight of all men. You don't have to keep secrets. If you got to go onto your Facebook and make little settings so that only certain people can see this and certain ones can see that, you're wicked. I'm just telling it like it is. Jeremiah chapter 5. Jeremiah 5, verse 26. We read through the Bible and we get jaded to it. But imagine this. He's talking about Israel, his people. He says, for among my people are found wicked men. He says it as though he's shocked. We've been reading that all the way up to the book of Jeremiah saying, well, duh. This is a shock to him. He did not imagine that when he set out on a mission from God that he was going to discover wickedness, and he's the only one out there trying to preach righteousness. Wicked men. They lay wait as he that setteth snares. They set a trap. They catch men. That's right. Now, you'll find those in people that wear a title that says Christian. He said, I did too. I went to my people, Israelites, the people God gave down the commandments to. They saw the miracles of God. And I found wicked men setting traps for other people. You'll find it now. People claiming to be Christian. Oh, we're Christian too. Come on, we'll go out for a beer. Okay, that's where it goes. We can all claim to be Christian and do this wickedness, so come join the party. That's what's going on in his day. It's going on in our day. 27. As a cage is full of birds, so are their houses full of deceit. Okay, they're going to deceive you. Therefore, they are become great and waxen rich. They are waxen fat. They shine, yea, they overpass the deeds of the wicked. Now, somebody who claims to be a Christian, if they get involved in wickedness, you'll find this to be true. I've found it to be true. It's not long before they're more wicked than the wicked people they started with. They become the leader of wickedness. You don't have a choice. If you're born again, you're bought with a price, you're different. You will either be a leader for righteousness or you'll be the leader for wickedness. You're going to lead. Verse 28. No, I finished that verse, didn't I? No, I didn't. At the colon there. Last part of the verse. They judge not the cause of the fatherless, that is, caring about somebody else, yet they prosper. And the right of the needy do they not judge. It's all about selfishness. Self. Self leads you into the biggest trap there ever was. Now, a spy can be spotted. if you're in a war and you've got somebody coming over to spy and they're going to fake like they're part of your army and they just want, hey, I didn't get the orders. What were the orders? You know, and then you slip them the orders. Well, he's just going to slip right behind the line and you're doomed. Well, that's going to happen in this battle too. You're going to have spies. They can be spotted. Mark chapter 7. Mark 7, verse 21. Unfortunately, you don't have to walk outside your door to find this spy. He's sitting behind your flesh. That one. Mark 7, verse 21. This is Jesus talking. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts. That's where we started. Evil thoughts. And then the same thing we've already seen. What follows evil thoughts? Adultery, fornication. God thinks that's so big, he put it right up at the top. Murders, theft, covetousness, wickedness. Just all kind of sin repeated over and over and over. Deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. Just foolishness. Just fooling around. Foolish. It's in the wicked list. All these things come from within and defile the man. So in this warfare that we're fighting, it's as close as the mirror. Start identifying it. Now, you will be able to identify it on the people on the outside, and you should. You should recognize it. But let that be an illustration to you so that you can go back into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say, I see you. You snuck over here now. 1 John chapter 3. Look at the uniform of the enemy. 1 John 3, verse 12. First John 3:12, he says, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one. Doesn't mean born of that wicked one. Now, there's a whole group out there that try to say there's a seed of Satan, and Cain was the seed of Satan. He was an offspring of the devil. You know, you got Rosemary's Baby and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's what he's talking about. What he means is he's siding with the devil, and that he did do. He sided with him to murder his brother. Sin lies at the door. He opened the door, said, come on in, let's have coffee. He said, Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Now we look at the uniform. Because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. The things people do, the things you do, declare what uniform you wear. Now, you'll hear people say, don't judge me. You know, you can't judge a book by the cover and all this stuff. You better judge it by the cover. Yeah. You don't go to the grocery store and buy a candy bar and imagine there might be arsenic in there. You're doing it based on the cover. We do everything else based on how it looks on the outside. Well, you better start judging people that way too. The things they do is the uniform that declares whose side they're on. All right, that's the warfare we're in.